RPSM Talks.
RPSM Talks?
RPSM Talks.
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 For everyone who is new, many of you are returning. This is RPSM Talks, and it's brought to you by our Regent Park School of Music. My name is Thompson, Egbo. I've been fortunate to be around since its inception as a student, teacher, board member, and day camp director, and now in my new role as the host of these talks. So it's great to be here with you all. So thank you again for being here. We'd like to welcome Keziah Myers and Jamilia Campbell from Advanced Music. And this is for us really a wonderful, actually for me, a really wonderful time and opportunity really to have people who really kind of just reflect, the spirit of what our school looks like and kind of mirror back to the students, but also have the both of them have really unique and wonderful journeys that I think will be great to share. But hello, Keziah and Jamilia. How's it going?
Hi, how are you?
Thanks again for being with us. I think this is going to be a really great treat for the students. I think actually one of the coolest things is just this new project, Advance. So, and I think really we're going to start there. And Keziah, I'm just going to ask you a bit about just what Advance is. There's so many facets that are really, I'd say, relevant to the students now and to the students as they go along their journey potentially in the music industry. And so I'd love to just kind of get your overview of it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Thompson. And thanks for having me, everyone. It is definitely great to be here. Well, Advance, is an organization that was started in 2020 and was, thought of as being a necessary addition to the industry because oftentimes we would see a very diverse stage, lots of people of ethnic differences on the stage, different a very unique space that really reflected the population of Canada on the stage. But when you looked at the audience or when you looked behind the scenes at all of the people that were part of holding up this infrastructure, it wasn't as diverse. And so Advance is Canada's Black music business collective focused on diversifying the industry by looking at uplifting and encouraging Black music business professionals to be recruited into the entertainment industry and then be retained by the music industry. So we really focus on building a community of those Black music business professionals. We focus on advocacy, so advocating in spaces where barriers may be evident. We focus on mentorship. So through this community, there is mentorship and relationship development that happens and helps to elevate the group and those who are at various stages within their career. And we focus on pipeline growth, and that is getting into the industry from a variety of different spaces, whether it be from learning about careers of music in high school to you being in a career for 30 years in another industry like finance or or government, and wanting to take your love of music and use your transferable skills to enter into the music space. So we are the space that really focuses on building out actionable items or actionable steps that really permeate the industry so that we can affect change by adding diversity across boards and C-suite.
Amazing. And I know that's
a good overview.
Yeah, no, that's a great overview.
I feel like I touched on like everything. I'm like, did I mention? Yeah.
You had mentioned sort of the development piece, and I know that there is work that is being done in conjunction with high schools. And so did you want to touch a little bit just on that?
Yeah, for sure. I'll start with an anecdotal little memoir of mine. So I am a classically trained musician. I started playing piano when I was 3. I went all the way up through my grade 10 and finished my Royal Conservatory certifications. Along the way, I picked up the flute, the violin, and I do sing. And I've sang at Roy Thompson. By the time I was 17, I had sung at various festivals, winning Kiwanis all the way to performing at Roy Thompson Hall. All the way at that time, I had no idea about the music industry and what actually helped to allow for such creation to be on these stages and such performance to be there. So in high school, I was very active in the music department, obviously, but I didn't hear anything about what I could do after grade 12. And so what Advance is doing is filling in that gap, is recognizing that there's not enough conversation about the careers within the music industry in your high school music setting. And there's definitely no conversation about the careers in the music industry outside of the music department. And the reason I highlight outside of the music department is because there's so many lovers of music that may not actually practice a musical instrument, but yet their love of music could drive them to being in the music industry because of the skills that they have for other things, whether it's data, science, math. So in the high schools, Advance has started to have some conversations with Music Counts. We are part of their track program. Jamilia here is one of the videos you can see on the website. And on the Music Counts website, focusing on track, and track is a highlight to the various careers in the industry. Myself also, I do a talk on the same platform. Mine speaks on royalties and rights, and Jamilia's talks on publicity. We've been working with Music Counts now for a few months and have started to also broaden that conversation. That conversation has now turned into a hip hop and social justice course that will be available for all students to participate in through a teacher resource that is a nationwide resource that Advance is helping to support. We're also working with the Center of Excellence for Black Student Achievement. And here we have etched out a course which is 9 weeks for Black students who are interested in the music industry. They take a 9-week course, and it is similar or akin to the co-op program, where they will be able to have various touch points within the industry. They'll be able to go into organizations, the real brick and mortar buildings of the labels, of the collectives, of the entertainment law offices, so that they can touch and feel and see a little bit more that is often behind the curtain. And then lastly, we are working with Stratagem on a traditional co-op program available for all grades 11s and 12s. And you can take the creative industries course focused on music industry. And this is where you will learn about the music industry from a variety of different presentations. But we also hope, once COVID is a little bit, less in our face, to be able to do some placements. And as a typical co-op would be, to get really in some of those unique spaces like Art House, like RSPM, similar to the exact same places that schools are, that people work at, so that people can have a co-op experience. Again, just helping to motivate them and create some opportunity to see all that they can do and can be within the music industry. That all rhymed. It was like rhythmic.
So Jamilia, a question for you. So you sit on the board and clearly working in the industry. What drove you to kind of be a part of the board? I realize now you're our second board member who's now been a part of these talks. Big C was on as well. But for you, looking at the work that Advance is doing, like what has been I mean, there's some things that are obvious, but probably things that aren't as obvious. What has been kind of the driving force between the support or the impact you want to make with Advance and the what resonates with you with their mission?
So I joined Advance from the summer. They kind of came together in inception in this new iteration of what we are today. And I think it was really important for me to be there because we are looking for a publicist, because we know how important it is to spread the word and get it out there so that people know who we are and can get involved and can really get out there in the media specifically, because my expertise is particularly in media relations. And so I joined Advance because, quite frankly, there are not many, if any, a lot of Black women publicists working in the music industry in Canada. So there weren't a lot of options when you're filling out your board and looking to fulfill this role if you do want a Black woman, a Black person in general, to be quite frank. And so I was chosen and I accepted immediately because I acknowledge the gap, as Keziah has mentioned a few times, that needs to be filled. And I think in these past, especially, in the pandemic in this past 2 years, I think a lot of people have really woken up and have taken things into their own hands and no longer just complaining about it or having the conversations with your peers or your friends, but actually coming together to form something, an actionable cause, an organization to really change the industry and change what's happening in this country. There's so much talent that I get to witness and see both on stage, off stage, and both in students, because a part of my role as a publicist, I was hiring interns for my company, and just to see how hungry students are and how much demystification needs to happen around the industry, because I think a lot of people want to get involved, they're interested in it, but they have no idea where to start or what it looks like. And so I think Advance is super duper important because it's breaking down that barrier. It's getting the communication out there. It's talking to different organizations, talking to schools, and making sure that students know that this is a viable option and a career path for you. I got into the music industry because I was told about this path into the music industry in the 7th grade. Now that's clearly very atypical and not typically what happens. I had a teacher say to me that you should either be a lawyer or a publicist. And I was like, cool. Sure. I knew what a lawyer was and what that kind of looked like. I didn't really know what a publicist was like for real, for what that kind of entailed. And then really as a student, as a child, I looked into like how much schooling was required for being a lawyer. And I was like, not for me, not gonna happen. So I didn't do that. But much like Keziah, I was really involved in the arts and loved music, played instruments, clarinet, violin. I was in dance, choir, all of the performing aspects. But when I was transitioning out of high school, I really was kind of nervous to pursue a career on stage. So I wanted to figure out how I could marry my love of the arts, but something a little bit more concrete, a little bit more in the professional realm. And I remember, that trusty old 7th grade advice about being a publicist. And when I was looking into university, I went to York U, and I knew I had an interest in sociology just as a field of study. And when I was looking and researching programs that I could get involved in, York actually listed different kind of career paths that people had gone into once they got that degree. And a publicist actually was listed with sociology. And I was like, loose tie, but I'm going to give it a try. So I went to York U, I got my BA in sociology, and I knew as my diploma, my degree rather, was coming, nearing the end and I was going to graduate, that I didn't have the tangible skills to actually be a publicist. Like I didn't know how to do the job. Like university teaches you a lot of theory, you're learning a lot of different, different types of concepts, but you're not learning how to do the job. And so, through conversations with people and just a little bit literally Google research, because I didn't have any mentors that looked like me. I didn't know anybody who was in the industry. I didn't have a pathway for somebody to be like, this is the steps, or this is how I've done it, or this is how you can do it. So trusty old Google. And I was like, okay, I need to know how to write a press release, how to do the basics. And so I was like, college. And so I went to Seneca at York and I did a corporate communications program for a year that culminated in an internship. And I did my internship at a record label. And before my internship was over, I was hired full-time as a publicist. And it was kind of like the most perfect scenario that could come of it. And I've been there I did there for about 6 years. And then I transitioned recently to a marketing role that I'm in currently right now that I'm loving very, very much so. But through my journey in being an intern, trying to figure out and navigate how I get involved, getting a position at a record label, which was my dream, I realized how much work there is to be done, because when I look around the buildings and the wonderful opportunities I've been given and award shows and what that looks like, I don't see people who look like me. And so to get back to your original question, advance, what I really hope to do is spread the word so we can change what the industry looks like, so it can be more reflective of what the stage looks like.
Amazing. Are you off of Eglinton and Don Mills, or were you ever?
You follow me, Thompson? What's going on here?
Oh, following. I'm asking if you were ever at the building. I know through the grapevine, moving back to the distillery. Yeah. I know the offices are moving back to the distillery, but shout out to Shane Carter, who's actually been a supporter. When I used to run the day camp at Regional Park School of Music, we used to actually go out to the label over on Liberty Street, and you'll have to ask him, but there may still be video there. The kids singing some Sean Kingston, and he did a video back to the kids. So I should try and figure out if we can dig that up somewhere, but definitely support and love from Sony. So question for you. So clearly, there's a diversity thing that we've been talking about, and it almost seems redundant or to ask the question, but why is it important for more Black people to be on that side of the industry? Because we know we want the diversity, which is, it almost seems kind of sure, like that's kind of the movement everyone's moving toward. We got to get more diversity, but sometimes I feel like there's also not the answering the question about, but why? Like, why do we want that? Why now? Like, what difference will it make? That could go
Jamilia actually, I was gonna say she kind of touched on it.
I did, for sure. And this can be answered in a million ways. And I'll take one aspect of it. For example, I know, as something that is often talked about in the Canadian music industry is how often people need to leave Canada to make it. You go to the States, everyone knows if you want to make it, you got to leave, you got to go. It doesn't happen here. And so that kind of answers the question. We need to change that narrative. There's so much talent here. Like the biggest artists in music, period, come from Canada. Like, that's just the facts. That's just the nature of the business. And so we shouldn't have to leave if you are an artist, and you shouldn't have to leave if you want to be in the business. And I think it can really start on the business side, and like getting people in the building who can look out for talent and acknowledge them. And so they can point them out so they don't leave. They can spot them out and they're not missed through the cracks. Like, the music industry is extremely busy. It's I last talk with my Spotify reps, my contacts, over 6,000 new songs are ingested into Spotify daily, globally, daily, right? So there's a ton of music out in the world. And so getting missed can happen. And I think when you have more Black bodies, Black faces who are more attuned to culturally relevant artists, moments, then it makes a huge difference in the cultural landscape and what's happening, the music that you hear on the radio, what's being programmed, the things that you see when you open up your music apps, the people and the artists that are being promoted in billboards. All of those decisions is coming from humans. Like, people have to make choices for that to happen. And so when you have a more diverse group of people who are working behind the scenes, that'll be reflective in the choices that they make. So I think it's really, really important to get people in on the ground level so that we can have a more inclusive and representative infrastructure.
Not to go off on a bit of a tangent, but I had a thought as you were speaking about the progression of sort of popular music and how rock was really kind of had this stronghold for a while, and now it's actually moved over to hip hop. And do you think a part of that, at least in the urban scene, is potentially why some of these opportunities are now opening up more in Canada, and instead of having to kind of go, if you want to be a Drake and having to hang out in LA or something before, I'm curious as to your thought on that.
She's looking at me.
Either or.
I'm like, as the person who like, Drake and Jace, it's a you question.
So, you know what? It does open some opportunity, but I cannot say it opens all opportunity. It's fact what Jamilia had just said. If there's lack of diversity in the infrastructure, then there's lack of opportunity for those that may be practicing or performing those types of music to get into the spaces that they need to get in. Radio is a good example of this, where yes, you're right. You see Drake, you hear The Weeknd, the biggest artist arguably in the world, but you look at across all of the radio stations and still see a very lackluster effort to diversify their representation of Black artists or artists of color. And also it ends up pigeonholing in some cases artists of a certain look to a certain genre, rather than allowing for anybody to exercise any genre of music. So yes, in one way it shines a light on Canada, and it has for the last 10 years. But on the other hand, if the infrastructure in the building and the workers behind the scenes are not reflective of what we're hearing on, worldwide on a Spotify, then your radio stations, for instance, still remain in some ways very much programmed the same.
Amazing. Question around, I'm curious around sort of I know what events is kind of like creating some of these opportunities. It's the co-op thing is, I think, amazing, just kind of being able to illuminate what it looks like day to day looks like. What is the piece from a mentorship standpoint that has kind of helped guide some of your careers? And how not just how important is that, how are you building that into now what kind of advances to it?
So
I have tons of mentors.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I was going to say, I think our answers are going to be really different to this, because I think Keziah is very fortunate enough to have a bunch of mentors, and me, not so much. Having been mentored, I've gotten a lot of great advice from a lot of people who have been in this industry, not necessarily in the role that I do particularly, but I learned so much from their experiences because there is so much crossover. And we work so closely together. So honestly, through the stories, through the networking, I've been really able to grasp, understanding and insight into how things work. And that's really been invaluable. And I try and do that back to youth myself, doing these things, these talks, doing the music counts track. I try and mentor, because I do understand that it can be a rocky road. Like, let's just be honest. It can be tough to navigate. And there's a lot of question marks. And quite frankly, I think there's a lot of question marks for everybody. And I think that isn't talked about. And so I think having a mentor to kind of ease you into it and kind of pacify that it's not just you, or that it will get better, or this is just kind of how it goes, and it's ups and downs and ebbs and flows, really can change the game, and really help with retention, because that's another thing. Getting in the door is one thing, but staying there is another. Staying there, getting promoted, and because it's so rocky and tumultuous, I don't want to scare anybody away, but it can be. I think having a mentor, especially a mentor of color, can really help you, and not of color, Black one, can really help you stay there and feel like you can do this and feel like it's a possibility. I think we don't have a lot of visibility of people, Black people who have been in this role before. So I think it's really important for someone like me to continue to climb the ladder, to be somebody who shows you that it's possible and it can be done.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, I have had many mentors, but not all have actually worked in the industry. My mentors are just me being surrounded by a group of people who encourage me to discover, encourage me to overcome any fears or self-doubts that I may have. I have a really strong, family, I would say, family and friends, people that have now become family over the years, that really say things to me like, the worst that can happen is someone says no. So just always ask, because you're going to eventually get a yes. It's a numbers game. like breaking it down into really tangible information and bite-sized pieces so that I can say, yeah, it's a numbers game. I had one friend, and he said that he had heard from one of his own mentors that most people fail at building their own business, and it's on the 10th time that they succeed. So he said in his mind, let me get 10 businesses started so that 9 can fail, so that I can have the one successful one and get that done as fast as I can, so I can already be on my trajectory to success. He had right now, the business that he owns has been successful, and he started that business when we were in our mid-20s, all because he wanted to just go through those 9 failed businesses so that on number 10, he knew he would have learned all he needed to learn along the way. But for me, other mentors within the industry, unfortunately, have not been Black women. I've been able to be alongside and adjacent and work in spaces with very few Black people, like Vivian Barkley. And so I've seen, from whether being on a panel with her or in the distance, because she's a publisher and I worked at SOCAN, see how she moves. But the reality is most of my mentors have been white women. And when I became a parent, it became white women with children. And I looked at the spaces that I was in and said, this person is the vice president of a particular department at a particular company. Women, we align as women, we align as mothers. I need to understand how she does what she does so that I can apply that to my life. And so I would ask questions. So I wouldn't say that I have mentor in the traditional sense. I am touch points with these people, but it's more relationship building. And the vast number of relationships that I hold of people and superiors that are older than me, that align with me in some way, shape, or form, being Black, being a woman, or being a mother, help me to culminate all that information so that I can decipher, okay, if I do this, this is going to take me here. If I do this, that's going to maybe change the trajectory to there and help me in some of the really big decisions that I've made along the way.
Oh, that's awesome. Jamilia, so I have a question for you, which is you're sort of coming in, doing a co-op and then being there and then sort of being promoted. You always hear about things like that happening, but I never believe them because I'm like, I actually was just having a conversation with somebody yesterday who was like, they're going to go work at the bank and the job they're going to do. And I was like, yeah, it's really probably unlikely that you're going to kind of travel to the channels to, the stories you hear about, for instance, RBC, their CEO, has been working there for 30 years, came in as, and I'm like, that doesn't happen anymore. But for you,
that was SOCAN though. SOCAN was an example of that too. The CEO of SOCAN started as an intern coming in the door.
But it feels like it's something so,
rare,
so rare and in the distance. But here you're a perfect example of kind of, not only sort of getting in, staying in. I think I'm curious as to, because it's now been 7 years. At what I'm sure there are different opportunities or different points where you're like, I don't know if I want to still be here. So along with sort of that progression and how amazing that is, which is what kind of prevented you from saying, I think I'm going to go seek another opportunity somewhere else? And what was, I guess, some of the decisions or things that happened that facilitated that sort of growth for you?
Well, for one, and really is just the crux of it, is that this was my dream. Like, I wanted this. This is exactly what I wanted to do. I set out to do it and I did it. So leaving, even when it got hard, it just kind of seemed like giving up or throwing in the towel too soon. I'm like, this is what I love to do. I love music. I sing every day. Like, I don't ask me to sing, but I sing.
I knew it.
And I just love music. So even if I wasn't necessarily doing what I'm necessarily doing right now, I feel like I would be involved in some way, shape, or form just because I love it so much. And I feel like who knows what the future holds and what it looks like. The great thing about the music industry is that it's connected and tied to so many different avenues and lanes, and you can really move and pivot and do so many things in this industry. So it's really exciting. Whenever I thought about leaving, it always somehow was like leaving, but tying back into like doing my own thing in the music industry, like starting my own agency, like whatever that kind of looked like, but it would tie back into this field because I do love it so I feel like it was really important for me to stay because it's a growth exercise. You don't leave when it gets tough. You kind of have to stick through it, especially in this industry. I think, watching just movies and TV and just seeing what we see on the news, we have a really kind of like a glamorous vision of what the music industry is. And I think now more than ever, we really get like a really down and dirty, expose style of like what happens. And so when I was going through kind of like rough patches, I was kind of like, well, these are my stories. Like this is my documentary. Like this is what they said. Like I can't just look at the sexy parts, the fun parts, just also this side of it as well. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to push through and I'm going to figure out and navigate how to do this. Or there must be a way. And not seeing, other people who look like me was a motivating factor for me to stay. I saw that, one of the, as you said earlier, Thompson, like the biggest genre in the world right now is like hip hop and, Black music. And to see so many people who are in decision-making positions not understand the culture, not understand the music, and to sit in those meetings and be privy to those conversations to really hear it firsthand. I can't go, I can't leave. I can't, like, this doesn't make any sense. Like I need to be here because they need people like me to help change. And like, this is why, people leave. This is why people think it's not possible. And so I think it was really important for me to stick to my guns and stick through it. Other things that kind of helped me stay is, working with artists who are amazing, incredible artists that inspired me to want to be there and help shape their careers. If had any sort of hand and involvement in their, trajectory of going sky high, I was there for it. It was so fulfilling and fun to be a part of their journey. And so that high that you get from working with artists and really, really helping them grow, and some of them really being so grateful and expressing that so beautifully of just like how happy they are that you are invested in spending time with them and putting care and thought and time and energy into them and their career when this is their baby, their passion project, and they're just so shocked to have people invested in them is fulfilling. And so I couldn't leave. I can't leave. I'm here right now. So here we are.
Amazing. And Keziah, I think we haven't touched much about sort of your progression, but I want to dive into that because, well, one, we've been fortunate with our guests, but the both of you are some of the more interesting people we've had on, but also from the standpoint of, Keziah, you've come up sort of doing music similar to the students, and I feel that that I resonate with that as well, which is I played music, and then as I was kind of finishing high school, my parents, it was kind of music was this kind of cool thing that I did, but there was no thought that might be something I might continue in. And so it's, so I'd love for you just kind of talk about how, for you, it's kind of a deviance, deviating away from music, but then kind of coming back to it. And I wonder if you want to sort of touch on that a little bit, because I think there's a lot of students as well who are kind of doing the music thing, but for them, it's, when RPSM, their sort of lifespan there ends, that may be where they're thinking that might be the end of their relationship with music as they know it, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be if you don't let it, is really an important part. And so I wasn't willing to let go of my passion for music. I just didn't know how to fully navigate to get into the industry. And when I was done high school, like I said, I was in the music program, but there was never a conversation about what career paths were available to me. I remember in grade 10, there was like this survey I had to do, is in the careers course, and it spit out, this algorithm back in the day, which is not a good algorithm. So thankfully we have some good coders now, but it basically said that I was going to be my thought process of working with my hands, or the idea I liked working with my hands, and that I was operational in thought, spit out that I was going to be a construction worker. I was like, they don't know me. That's not happening. That's not happening. These nails don't, that's not gonna happen. The other thing is the algorithm picked up that I liked music and said I was going to be a music teacher. And I'm like, well, I didn't say I loved kids. I mean, not that I don't, but I don't know that teachers like automatically where you're going to go to if you love music. And so because of that, I was just at a loss. And by the time grade 12 came, in my household, you went to university. There was not a, well, you can test it out. No, you go to university, and you better get in. So my marks had to be high enough. I had to be able to get into a university. And the caveat that my mother had was, you're also not allowed to stay in Toronto, which is where I'm from, unless the best program in the world is in the city of Toronto. I was like, why? She said, because you will never, ever be able to have this living away from home experience ever again. And you don't know how it may change your life. Well, I tell you, it changed my life. Because I ended up going into film studies because it was the closest thing I could think of that was a creative, had a creative aspect and would get me into a university program outside of the city of Toronto. All of these things were out there. So I was accepted at Carleton, I was accepted at Brock, and I was accepted at Laurier. And so I went to Laurier. I was a dancer at the time, was teaching dance at Malvern Recreation Center. And so I went to Laurier because of their dance program. Lo and behold, I get to Laurier and I don't love the film studies course. Well, I didn't really love film to begin with. It's just I knew what got me into the door and was screaming creative or some sort of creative expression. So then after taking film studies for a very short amount of time, I knew I wasn't leaving university. Just because it gets hard doesn't mean you leave. Let's look at this as a problem solving exercise and say, well, how am I going to still come home in 4 years with a degree and not what I went into school from before? And so I saw business administration and I saw communications. And at this point, we had started to take some communication courses, which kind of petered on marketing. And so I said, oh, perfect. I'm going to change my major. So I changed my major to business administration, focused on communications and marketing, and I double majored in sociology. And my double major in sociology is always because I've had this love and unique interest in people and how people work and affecting people and what affects their changes. So I get into this program and I am loving the program. It's really interesting. And then I meet this guy who played on the basketball team, and he happened to be playing on Flow 93.5 on heavy rotation. And he just mentioned it to me, and I'm like, okay, I don't need an autograph. Do you need me to need an autograph? Because I don't need an autograph. But he, the artist's name is JD Era, and JD Era was going to school at Laurier on a basketball scholarship, playing heavy rotation on Flow 93.5. And so he knew that I was in marketing and that I was, interested, as a friend, but he understood more than I did what marketing could be and how it could be used in the favor of him, who is an artist. So there was a show that happened, and it was Nas and Elephant Man in concert together. Imagine that, like, who programmed Nas and Elephant Man? It's just because back then they were taking all Black music, putting it together, throwing it on a stage and saying, okay, go. So JD Era, and you may hear me refer to him as Joseph because that's where we are in our career. He played university basketball. Everyone could find out his name. So JD Era says to me, hey, I'm opening for this event. Can you help me sell tickets. So I said, sure. I designed a ticket with his logo on it, with all of his information, barely mentioning Elephant Man and Nas, because I wanted it to show the branding and the brand recognition of Keziah and his logo. And I knew, because we were at school, that the campus would be more interested in going to see Joseph to begin with. So we're selling tickets, and that's really what started my real interest in careers within the music industry, or at least it was the area that opened the gateway to allow me to see all of these careers in the music industry. So from then we became really good friends. So I ended up connecting with Era, and he introduced me then to some of his other friends, who at the time included this guy named Aubrey Graham, this guy who was going by Boy Wonder. No free beats is what he was going by. Boy Wonder / no free beats. And this guy named Johnny Rocks. And so all of these people started to enter into my circle. And so very quickly, I was surrounded by artists who had decided that they were going to be artists as their career. And I was being asked to outline grant applications. I was being asked to participate in writing sessions. I was being asked to book venues or collect money. All of these various skills I was learning, almost as if it was an internal internship in my own basement at my school, on my school campus. And still I came out of university and I was like, well, I don't know that I'm going into the music industry, because I really didn't know. I knew I had done all of these things and I had gotten involved. And I think that was really, really important, was that I got involved. I never said no to an opportunity. As one of my mentors say, just always say yes. If it's an opportunity, what's the worst that can happen? Just say yes. I mean, let's be smart and pragmatic about it. But like on the grand scale, don't let fear be the reason you say no, is really what it is. And so I left university, and at that point, by the end of university, I had also been the president at the university. I had continued to work with this Aubrey Graham, who had now become Drake and released his first mixtape during university. I had helped to launch Kim Davis's newest singles, and each summer I had a business internship where I was typically working at Procter & Gamble. So Procter & Gamble offered me a full-time position upon finishing my last year internship, and so I took it. I ended up moving away for a little bit, moved to West Africa because an opportunity showed up, and I said yes. Moved to West Africa for 6 months and came back, and was now working at P&G full time. And I was still very connected with the groups that I had been rolling with in university. I was going to the shows, I was doing administration. I was saying no actively to being a manager. I just felt that if I was a manager, I would not be able to be as open to, supporting all of the artists that I really wanted to support, because I felt like my loyalty and my focus had to be on one. So I always knew, like, the artist manager, I can't do it. I can't only, I can date one person, but I can't, like, industry of only one friend or one person that I really want to support, because I love all the music they're playing. So we get home from an award show in Buffalo, and Boy Wonder calls me and Kim Davis calls me. They both call me and say, why don't you do this full time? And I'm like, do what? I just came from an award show with you where we just had a lot of fun. And they're like, get in the industry. Really think about getting in the industry. And so I started to do my own research. I, at that point, said, wow, my passion and the drive that I had and the experiences that I continually let enter into my mind, my space, my subconscious, my whole experience was now matching with my transitional skills that I had learned in university, those hard skills I had learned. And so I went to look for an unpaid intern. Well, I went to look for an internship. Actually, I probably went to look for a job was really what I went to look for, and realized I didn't have the experience to be able to get a job. So then I had to look for an internship. But because I wasn't in a school program, I had come out of university already. Those internships weren't available to me because they were for people who were in their program in post-secondary program of some sort. So I took an unpaid internship. Thank goodness it only lasted for 3 months. But I took an unpaid internship not knowing how long it was going to last. It lasted for 3 months. And then at 3 months, I remember saying, I've been doing really good work. Is there a budget to pay me? And so they paid me, started paying me full time in 3 months. 3 months after that, because of a comment I had made in my interview, they moved me to New York City. In my interview, and I'm 23 at this time, I said, I know you have an office in New York. I love New York. If there's ever an opportunity for me to get to New York, I'm the girl to do that. And so 6 months later, after 6 months in total, I get a call from the CEO, and she says, remember when you said you wanted to move to New York? And I was like, yes. And she says, would you like to be our director of print and television initiatives in our New York office? And I was like, yes. I said yes. I took the opportunity. I trusted that things were going to work out. And I said, how long before you need me there? She says, can you make it 2 weeks? Yep, sure. I'll be there in 2 weeks. Didn't really even blink. Definitely didn't call the boyfriend at the time. Like, there's priorities here. Career, I can find you later. If you're about it, then you'll be here when I get back. Right? See, that's Jen's face. Like, I love the facial expression. I should speak it. She should act it. Yeah, exactly. And then I called I didn't call my mom. I just went home after work. I got home, said to my mom, I need to be in New York in 2 weeks and I'm moving there. And my parents were like, let's go. And so they drove me to New York, made sure that I was living in a adequate living environment, and then left me. And I worked in New York, overseeing Adam Levine's clothing line that was coming out, working with some, they consider it world music, but it would have been considered Afrobeat, and got that on NPR. Was backstage at some incredible concerts, but just was taking in everything that I could take in. And when I tell you it was a slingshot in my career trajectory, that's exactly what it was. Because upon coming back after being in New York with the energy and the drive and the real focus on just let's getting it done, coming back to Toronto, walking into Universal at a meeting, them saying we want to hire you basically on the spot was what that prepared me for. And then from there, I built an internship program at Universal, one of the Universal sub-labels, built an internship program for Black women, oversaw operations, and really realized that my sweet spot where I really loved was operations. I loved connecting, whether it be a connector of people or a connector of processes. That's what I really found was my passion along with music. And so the operations role in the music industry fills that void for me on both levels. So I left Universal, overseeing the operations there, and knew there was more to learn. Again, I am just a student of life. There's always something more to learn. Just say yes to the next opportunity. And so when I left Universal, I said, what don't I know about? I kept hearing about this music licensing, but I understood music licensing as it pertained to a commercial. I understood someone would license their music to a visual source and get paid. What he didn't understand was licensing and royalties and what rights management looked like. So I purposely applied at SOGAN And I applied. I went from a full-time position at, at the sub-label at Universal to taking a mat leave contract. And that mat leave contract at SOCAN, I knew would just get me in the door because I was really looking for this additional experience. So I get into the door. Once I got into SOCAN, I really realized how much I enjoyed it and how much more there was for me to learn. So I was like, well, how am I going to turn this mat leave into full-time? Like, I have to make a grand gesture. The grand gesture, in part, was cut a little bit short because I found out shortly after I got hired that I was pregnant, which meant that year mat leave became 9 months, and I still needed to end up having a full-time job. Like, that was the goal. So I worked on extra projects, collaborating with other people, learning what other people in the building did. I wrote a tariff for platforms like Bandcamp and SoundCloud so they could be licensed in the SOCAN platform. And I was like, they just need to see how hard I'm willing to work. Similar to what Jam said, like, I did the work, I'm putting in the effort, I deserve to be here. And I'm motivated because I'm the only one that looks like me in this building, like in every space, in every boardroom, and every conversation. So the day that I was about to go on mat leave, I get a full-time position. And so I was there at SOCAN for 6 years and had the pleasure of overseeing the A&R department also, which kind of completed that full circle. But still, I'm in my evolution of learning, always looking for the, saying yes to the next challenge. And for me, if that means affecting the people that are underrepresented in this industry and giving them a platform, then I'm absolutely going to do that. So when Jamilia and the board asked me to take on the executive director role of Advance, I said yes. Because my mentor told me that's why. So that's my my very, very interconnected but non-linear story.
No, I love it. I think one of the things that's been sort of a reoccurring theme is just how much people are just fans of what they're doing and into it, and so some of these, if you want to say they've manifested some of these opportunities, but it's been clear that when you're kind of driven fan of the music, like that's the path you're on, those things will come to you. So that's really great to hear, and hopefully for other people listening, the inspired is. I always say to people, you never know where your next opportunity is going to come from. So really need to be open to what it looks like. It might not be packaged the way you thought it was going to be, but definitely be open to what's next. So there's a couple of things I wanted to ask. I touched on a little bit, sort of the taking the learning forward, but also we haven't really talked about some of the past events, but current things coming up for Advance that might be of interest to some of the students. I don't know if you want to just kind of let us know what's exciting and happening. Obviously, there's a job board. There's lots of information on the site, but if there's anything you wanted to kind of highlight, I wanted to just give you an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, for sure. We have, I would consider them flagship events now that we've kind of gone through a year and a little bit of Advance being in existence. So coming up in February, we will be having a Advance career fair. And this is really to help people see the careers that are in the industry, but also to provide some of those job opportunities that are going to be available for summer internships. But at that place, there will also be some co-op opportunities that will be coming, or partners that we would be working with. In June, we have already started planning our marquee event, which is AMPed, Advanced Music Professional Entertainment Dialogues Day. It is going to be a day just full of professional development, education, again, career focused, but also some tips on entrepreneurship and rights and royalties, and some of these jargon words you hear like NFT, non-fungible tokens. What does that mean, and how does that relate to a creative work? We are also going to be having musical acts at that event, and really want that to be kind of the epicenter, with it landing in Black Music Month. In Black Music Month, we also do focus on Black music. So there is a Play Black initiative that we run throughout that month that I hope to see next year. And then nearing the end of the year, we have a career expo, which is purposely at the beginning of the school year to talk about the careers in the industry, so that by the time you get to January's career fair, you're prepared and you have an idea maybe of where you would like to try, because there is no problem in ever taking an internship and saying, you know what, the best thing about this internship is I realized it wasn't where I want to be in the industry. And because that is it's valuable, it's really valuable. Other events that we constantly have going on is we're curating for conferences and festivals. We offer free and discounted tickets to all of those conferences and festivals, and we are on the job board constantly just highlighting some really good opportunities for people in the industry. Did I cover everything?
Yeah, no. Well, I wouldn't know. You would know if you've heard everything.
I'm looking at Jams. She's like, I don't know. Do you know? I feel like I should call out someone in the audience to be like, because our programming chair is definitely in the audience, and he's like, she missed this.
Amazing. Well, you know what? I think actually, Jamilia, had you finished what you wanted to say about just sort of taking? Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I know we want to get to a Q&A, and I would love to address any questions that people have.
I took the words right out of my mouth. At this time, we're going to open up the floor to some questions from members of the RPSM Youth Committee joining us this evening. For those who are unfamiliar with the Youth Committee, it is a community-wide youth group that focuses on young leaders of high school age. They meet virtually every week at this time, Thursday, 7 to 8. And engage in social activities, discussions, educational workshops like this one, leadership and development. Are there any questions from the Youth Committee audience members? Feel free to raise your hand or put your questions in the chat, and we will we'll take them.
Thomas's question was, where is Kim Davis? For those of you, I mean, so I'm not sure actually the entire age range. So let me give a background of Kim. So Kim, Scarborough-born South African woman who has an incredible voice, had some pretty big singles back in the day, even with Sizzla, and she also had some pretty big songs that actually moved over to the US airways. She has, always been singing, and her story is really unique. So I'll keep it really short, but she knew she could sing, and then she continued singing because she knew she would be able to use it to put food on the table for her kids. So Thompson asked about where Kim Davis is, and if you're interested in some music knowledge or some history, look up Valentine for Life. That one is a really good one, and look at Sometimes. That one is also a really, really good one. She is now married to Drake's personal trainer, also known as OVO Johnny Rocks, which was the Johnny Rocks that I grew up with in university, and they actually met while I was in university. So she's married to him. They have 2 kids from her, and then they just had a boy last year. He just turned 1 in November. So she is writing a lot. She is traveling. She is doing background. She actually sings background for Division. Also, now it's great. You can catch her on a stage.
Great. I have to look out. Yeah, I've played like back in my early days to the scene. She was like friends with a couple other friends of mine, singers. So I got to accompany her a bunch of times, and then
Okay.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
probably, depending on what years it was, I would have been around.
Oh, yeah. Back when like Revival was a place, that people used to hang out
Yes,
a lot.
so
Yeah.
then I definitely was around.
Okay, wow.
I was her business manager, not her artist manager, her business manager. So when it was time to collect or to make sure the contracts were right, I was the one
Amazing.
negotiating all of that.
Amazing. Do any of the students have any questions about Advance? Or any questions? Or any questions?
I have a question, Keziah and Jamilia. Thanks for being here again. So working with Advance, it's a lot of community work and advocacy work in the industry. What does a day-to-day look like in that type of sector?
Realistically, the days are, yes, a lot of, answering a lot of emails. And the reason right now is because Advance is so relatively new. Everybody wants a piece of Advance, also given the social climate of diversity and the need to see more faces of color in the industry. So we definitely are a place that is constantly having conversations about collaborations and partnerships. So email is frequent, phone calls, happen until hours of the night. But the real focuses in the day include me looking at strategy and me understanding what needs to be done for the next day, week, or month, and then delegating to my incredible group of staff and volunteers and seeing various aspects come to fruition. So you spoke about advocacy. As it pertains to advocacy, it is working with a government relations organization and having conversations about what I didn't know about the government, which was new to me. Politics, yes, I vote, but the nitty gritty of politics and transitions, I didn't necessarily understand. So lots of learning, and then strategizing yet again about how to take that learning, look at the mandate of Advance to advocate and empower the Black music business professional, what barriers of access need to be dismantled, and how to do that from an advocacy lens, whether it be going through government and talking to ministers, whether it be having conversations with bureaucrats, or whether it be rallying the industry so that there is an industry understanding, like Bill C-10, which was related to radio and how radio is programmed, focusing on artists and people of color, and collaboratively going to the powers that be to make a change.
Nice, thank you. Also, Jamilia got cut off when she was talking about joining Advance as a member. Can you speak a little bit about why it would be important for any of these students or any student that would be interested in signing up as a member? Can you just talk about that process, what the benefits are? Because I mean, in our previous RPSM talks, it's very clear that relationships in the industry are a huge thing. So just want to break that down a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just going to say. So, there aren't a lot of like databases and resources already in place. And so the music industry is largely based on relationships. It's based on who you know, it's based on those kind of conversations, growing your network, people speaking your names in rooms of opportunity. That's how people get their foot through the door. And so joining an organization like Advance helps you to get that face time, helps you to get that name recognition. Oftentimes, a lot of the people who are involved in Advance already are involved in some facet of the industry in one way or the other. And oftentimes we're looking for various things, whether that's interns or we're looking for coordinators, or we understand like when opportunities come abound because we're working in the industry, oftentimes they get siphoned through us. And because like the board members in particular that I'm speaking of, people, we're front facing and people know that we're affiliated with Advance. They'll come to us first with opportunities, sometimes even before it goes live, before it's on Indeed, before it's on LinkedIn, it's on Advance. So it's beneficial for students and people who are interested in getting involved in the industry to join Advance, because you kind of have a first access pass for people who are looking for a bunch of different opportunities and avenues to get involved in. And so often we hear from organizations or companies that they don't have, Black staff or staff of color because they don't know where to find them. And so if you come to Advance, it's a great database of a bunch of Black professionals, and there's no more excuse if you can't find us, we're all here and available. So it's a great opportunity to join for community advocacy, learning, mentorship opportunities, job networking. It's a really great opportunity just to kind of spread your wings and get some understanding in a lot of different areas and avenues, and make friends, network, and get a great understanding of how this industry kind of really works. I think a lot of us are open to conversation and honest, and having these kind of conversations that kind of break down the confusion and how to get involved and what this really looks like and what this really means.
Actually, Thompson, I have a question for you guys.
Sure. For who, Eddie?
For them, because how many years are you mentoring for students?
I think Eddie wanted to know how long either you've been sort of either being mentored or also mentoring.
I would say I've been mentored from the beginning, just in all areas of my life. But mentoring, I did that basically as soon as I entered into a space where I was being paid full time. I was really always looking at who was coming up right behind me. So if I could affect the change of someone else and share that information, I wanted to get it out. I've never been someone who just held my mentorship tips close. I'm like, hey, this is what's happening over here. Did you know about this? And in a way, I've kind of that's the mantra that I live by. So constantly mentoring just by sharing information.
Yeah, pretty similar. When I got into the industry at the record label, immediately one of my responsibilities was hiring interns. So I took that as although it's, business necessary, but the way you kind of treat them and what you make sure that they learn and ensure the kind of quality of work that you're giving them was really important to me. So I took that seriously and did that, but also going back to my alma mater at York and speaking on panels whenever they asked me to join, or doing informational interviews, lunch and learns with students sometimes, just to really, again, it's answer any questions. I like being an open book and just kind of helping students, just giving them the raw information and the data quick. I think time is really, really valuable. And I think spending that with students one-on-one and helping them to navigate and make the best decisions for them is kind of how I try to mentor and give back in my own way.
Amazing. Thanks so much. If there are no other questions, I'm just going to say a big thank you to Keziah and Jamilia for joining us. Thank you so much. We will definitely bug you to advance our cause in illuminating the industry to our students in the future. So please look out for our for us to keep bugging you. And I am a little giddy because I feel like these talks just get better and better each time. But also for me, I think there's something that would have been amazing had I been a student, to just kind of have somebody, tell me stuff. And like you said, at the moment you might not quite get it, but it might be a year or two later when you're making some of those decisions where you're like, oh, I remember what Jamilia said. Let me go back and check out the YouTube that Jasper put together and see what she said. So thank you again. Also, a little special thanks to Simone and Tamla from our youth committee for supporting this event. Jasper, like always, and Stephanie for bringing this series to life, I should say. That concludes our 8th installment. I am Thompson Egbo. Thank you so much for joining us. Also, Jasper will be putting this up when he has time. Eventually, it takes him a while to get these things wrapped up and finally online so you can all see it.